Now, I did put quite a few breaks in because I was cognizant of the fact this is a networking forum, and the best way to network is have a chat with people. So you'll have an opportunity to talk about that latest thought in your mind in the near future. We'll have another break. We're going to have Justin up in a minute, and then Roy's going to talk, and then we'll have a break after that. So Justin Duggan, you'd like to come up and introduce you to Justin. I learned about Justin by David Muscat up the back there, who saw you speak at some Stop the Lockout event and was very impressed, so he let me know about it. And it was good that you agreed to come along.
My pleasure.
Justin's a professional fly fishing guide on Sydney Harbour. How about that for an office? There you go.
Thanks. Thanks, Doug. Pleasure to be here, and I must say I'll be coming from a little bit more of a grassroots level in terms of my affiliations and so on. I guess really at the end of the day, I'm a fisherman. I take people fishing. A bit of background on me. Yes, I do run Sydney fly fishing tours. I do fly fishing and sports fishing, Sydney Harbour, Pittwater, those places. My background, as soon as I left school, I actually did some work for National Parks and Wildlife, volunteering, then got employed, mostly working with wildlife. I then became a zookeeper at Taronga Zoo for a number of years, all the while maintaining my passion for animals, wildlife photography, fishing, those sorts of things. And I kept connected with the environment through my fishing. I learnt my passion as a kid for the environment through fishing. My dad took me fishing. I'd go to the beach. I'd see all sorts of animals being caught, put back. He taught me a lot about the environment. So because of that, I'm very grateful for my passion for the outdoors, teaching me a lot about life. And I think now, being able to return that to people as a fly fishing guide and fishing guide and taking people out, you'd think on city waterways, but anyone who's spent any time on those waterways knows that you can get a good passion for the environment there. The problem is our passion's under threat, and it's under threat from ideologues, people who pretty much, most of them don't spend time seeing and doing what we do, whether it's hunting or fishing. I think one of the things as anglers out there, I notice a lot of the time that I'm taking people fishing is how many share a passion for way more than just catching fish, and way more than just hunting too. When I go with hunters, I spend a lot of time guiding up in Cape York as well, and we go out in the field, and everyone I know who hunts up there has a passion for that environment. So how do we get through to these ideologues, and how do we protect our sport? Well, Doug mentioned the Stop the Lockout. Just to give you a quick bit of background there, I got involved in the everyone's aware of the Stop the Lockout Facebook page? I mean, it was dynamite because of this marine parks issue that came in, which is a major threat to angling. And I just put some videos up because I was really passionate about losing something so dear to me and dear to my customers and the tourists that come out with me. And it became very apparent very quickly that there was a lot of people who were under threat with these greens that were pushing an ideology and not really backed by any science. So we went in very, very hard and very easily by just putting videos out there of what the environment was actually like. And one of the ones that I guess got me a lot of focus was I was standing on the boat talking pretty much to Noel Blair and saying, what the hell are you doing? You're going to lock us out of fishing this area. And it's better now than it was 30 years ago. Meanwhile, a pod of dolphins went past my back, chasing a school of salmon, while I was looking at something like 19 seals sitting on the rock at Barrenjoey, none of which was really there 20, 30 years ago. The seals had increased because the fish had increased and the dolphins were there chasing the salmon and so on. So what happened in that campaign, and this is the heart of what I want to get to here, what happened in that campaign is reality trumped ideology. And we had a really, really quick win there because there were so many voices from anglers and people coming out and basically saying, well, hang on a second, none of what they're trying to lock us out from none of what they're trying to say is actually true. So the science wasn't on their side. The science was on our side. So as an angler or hunting voice, it's really very, very important we articulate our cause. So at a grassroots level, when I see people talking about hunting and fishing, I really want to say to those people, articulate your cause in a way that is really, really easy for the middle people to understand. And what happened is we won the middle ground, because most people are actually just centre left or centre right. They're not radical left and they're not radical right. So we had a radical left agenda that was trying to drive the centre away from fishing. But we had a problem. You go to a dinner party and you have 20 people at a table and you say to them, oh, what do you think of marine parks? I reckon 19 of those people say, oh, they're a great idea. Oh yeah, we've got national parks, we've got to protect the marine environment. So you have to win that mindset over to your way of thinking. And the reason, or the way you do that, is just by actually dealing with hard facts and getting the science and getting the passion for the environment on your side. See, the vocals on the left are saying we're doing it for the environment. And I think the message lost with hunters and people like myself as anglers is we share that absolutely. I share that same passion for the environment. The difference is I'm involved in it and immersed in it, and my licence fees pay to protect that environment, and I actually am in it every day. They're sitting in coffee shops trying to solve this. And so what happens is you win the middle ground. You win the middle folk by actually sharing that passion with them and actually coming on board and saying, no, we are for the environment. And quickly on that marine park thing, just wanted to, just got a note here from Niall Blair when he tried to bring that marine park in. He said, we're making sure this is a science and risk-based program. It's not just about drawing lines on maps and saying we can lock out fishers in this area and stopping activities there. But the truth of the matter is that's exactly what it was. And where our threat started to come from was actually from bureaucracy. The MEMA panel, Marine Estate Management Authority, was made up of what came basically down to a handful of ideologues who were coming out of the University of New South Wales and green groups like the Underwater Research Group. And when you looked at it, and Malcolm will nod at this because we looked at these groups, it was the most incestuous bubble of left-leaning dive groups, scientists, pretty much a single scientist or two scientists, and they really were trying to capture public space for their own group's interest. And it was the most amazing thing to realise that this whole thing was being driven by people who were capturing, it was bureaucratic capture. They were using the bureaucracy to try and drive this agenda. You have to expose these sort of people. And when people like Niall Blair come out and say they're making sure it's not about lines on maps, and you can prove that it is about lines on maps, it becomes very, very clear very quickly that you've got some pretty sinister stuff in the background going on. Now what I wanted to, just going on to my notes now, internal threats to our sport, hunting, fishing, that sort of thing. I was thinking about this and I was thinking sometimes we can be our own worst enemies. And at a grassroots level, out there on the water all the time, I'll be the first to say not all anglers are good. And I'm sure for the hunting folk you can say the same. And we definitely can be better at cleaning up our own backyard. And the reason for that is, unfortunately, nowadays with social media, we can lose the middle ground very, very quickly with the wrong attitudes in some of our flock, so to speak. You can't control everyone. And it's probably a lot easier in the hunting fraternity than it is in the fishing fraternity, because it's a lot harder to get a gun than it is to go into Kmart and buy a fishing rod. But when the public see spools of line lying everywhere, people taking, bait off the rocks in areas they shouldn't be doing, leaving wharves, public wharves in Sydney Harbour completely covered in crap and junk and, the threat of closing down wharves. It's really hard to win the public over because we get tarred with that brush. We need to be more vocal as groups about coming out and opposing that kind of behaviour, a lot more vocal. It's getting better, but especially with social media, in our clubs, fishing clubs, in your hunting clubs and so on, it's been an attitude for a while that we don't like to promote that. I know some of the fishing magazines, I've talked to editors and they don't like running that sort of stuff in the fishing magazines. And I kind of get it because you're advertising the bad behaviour, but the public know it's there. They see it. So I think it's really important that we own some of that in terms of not hiding it and sweeping it under the carpet. If there's something bad there, as groups we come out and we just say, this is not how we behave. These are fringe dwellers and we want them out of our sport, or we want them to fix their ways. That's one thing I think internally is a threat. Poor education. We need to be better at educating those who hunt and fish. I need to be better at making sure that the people that fish with me aren't throwing cigarette butts in the water and and making sure that's a small thing. But if you could throw a cigarette butt in the water, or you think it's okay to throw your VB bottle off the back of your boat because it's just going to sink to the bottom, or you even want to throw your coffee grounds in the water, you're not actually starting at a grassroots level with respecting what you got. So attitude change for everyone is a really good thing to do. And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying this as someone who's self-righteous. I'm just saying it as someone who sees that in the environment day in, day out. And I think it's the public notice it. Once again, it's about winning that middle ground. Respecting the animals you kill or the animals you release. Very big attitude thing for us. I watched a video of a guy who started a fishing operation the other day, and he caught an Australian salmon, and he pulled his tongue out at the camera as a bit of a young dude. That's all cool, and he just flicked the fish off into the water. It's just not a good look for us as anglers and educators and guides to be treating the animals with disrespect. Once again, the public notice it. So really important thing for us to work better as groups, clubs and so on at promoting the way things are done properly, doing things properly. I do speak a lot to people about fishing, and actually the gentleman who mentioned giving backstraps to people, best conversations I've had with people are people I've given fresh fish to, and they want to know where it came. Oh, where did this come from? Oh, well, we caught 25 of these today, but we kept 2, and I thought, I'll give you some. And right, and you have a conversation around actually talking about harvesting and how you respect the animal that you catch. It's a really good thing. We educate at grassroots level, that spreads pretty quickly. And a lot of people who are opposed to our sport and fishing, thinking, you're killing animals and so on, can come around pretty quickly with good education. Externally, the threats to our sport are a lot greater. But if we can educate internally with our children, teaching our friends' children, taking them fishing, and teach them that eggs don't come from cartons, fish don't come from fish shops, steak doesn't come from a supermarket, that's where we're going to win the battle. I think it's really hard now with a hard line. How are we going for time? We're okay? Yeah. Yep. It's very, very hard now with the education system, with universities, journalism schools. The hard left is really being pushed as an agenda through schools, right through education systems. And they're getting hold of the kids. Veganism's the big push now, huge push. Yeah, I've got friends whose children are vegans and they're like 6, don't want to eat meat. No, not going to eat meat. We need to win that battle. We should be running more fishing classes for children, more education about how to actually sustainably, I hate that word actually, why did I even use that? Sorry. We know where that language comes from. But yes, how to harvest your own food and teach kids that's how it's done. Any child who's grown up on a farm will understand that, but we need to be much better at that. Externally, this ideology is the big threat. So I talked about internally, we've just got to be better at managing how we educate the middle on how good we are at actually running our sport. But externally, the threats are much greater. Obviously, the political landscape's changed greatly in the last couple of years. There is a big threat to my passion and my sport. Obviously, Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party are a big voice in helping us articulate our point. And I want to talk very quickly about articulating a point. The people we choose to promote our sport are as big a part of the battle as anyone else. I'll be the first to tell you I've been absolutely embarrassed by some of the mouthpieces that have come out for our sport. By the same time, I've been really encouraged by others. And the thing is, it's really critical that we win that middle ground, and you're not going to win the middle ground by swearing your heads off, carrying on like a bunch of pork chops. We want people who can articulate. We've got the upper hand in terms of articulating it in terms of the science and in terms of what we're doing morally. There's nothing wrong with it. We've got the upper hand there, but the public aren't always educated. You need good mouthpieces. You need people who are articulate, are not extreme. All those sorts of things are really important in articulating our cause. And I found that with Stop the Lockout with the group. There were certain characters that came out. Oliver Evans, I think, was a scientist who's very much dealt with sustainable fisheries and fishing. I think it was Oliver Evans. Yeah, I think I got the name right. He was living down Maroubra, an absolutely wonderful voice. They could not deal with him at all in the Greens and the conservation movement because he had the upper hand. An articulate man with a wonderful way of promoting the sport. So what happened was we got those articulate voices out there and we won the middle ground because that's how that page started to grow very quickly. There was mums and dads and kids and everything involved. So very important who we actually get to speak on our behalf. I mentioned youth education. I just want to quickly talk about clubs. How much time we got? Tiny bit. Yeah, I'd love to take some questions too. In terms of getting club involvement as well, fishing clubs and hunting clubs, there's a few things that have happened in the fishing industry that have been really good. Does anyone know the program run by Matt Trippett? He's running the Fly program, which is an education program basically around mental health and using fly fishing as a way to basically to help men recover from war, from trauma. It's been aimed at men because there's also a program for women casting for recovery for breast cancer and so on. That's a wonderful thing to look at in terms of educating the public on the benefits of a sport. So Matt's been running the Fly program. He's got government assistance and it's done very, very well. There's an initiative. There's a way of partnering up. We talked about finding other people to partner with. Mental health, the benefits of what we do. I don't know how, I actually feel like going into mental retreat when I can't go fishing. I'm sure people are the same with hunting. It's a great outlet. Really important aspect of our sport is to look at the mental health benefits. And so Matt's done that. Local clubs I know have got involved in river cleanups, doing positive things and getting out in the community. It doesn't have to be about fishing. We're just going to clean up the river. I guess in a way it is about fishing. We're protecting our river, but we're also putting back in. Make it visible. Don't just do it for that reason. Do it because you want to, but we've got to be more proactive about getting involved in those sort of initiatives as well. Really important at a club level to really bandy everyone together for those public initiatives that can be seen to be making a difference. Very hard to attack fishermen and fishing or hunters and hunting when we're conserving areas and doing as much as we can in that field. And I think the last thing I'll sort of mention on this is as far as clubs go and what we're going to do going forward in relation to the threats to our sport. At a club level, there's always differences of opinion. Everyone knows you form a club, there's going to be those who think one thing and those who think another. I can't even imagine what it must be like for the guys and shooters and fishers and in a political party. The fact we can all come together with a common cause, we should never leave or lose sight of that. And for me as an angler, I hear that many differences of opinion. If you want to know how hard things are, try and be a moderator on a Stop the Lockout page. The amount of stuff that goes on there, and I've had to leave the page alone for 6 months. I've just been too busy with work, but I will come back to it in the winter months. But to moderate that page is ridiculous. And the reason being is there's too many opinions, too many people with ideas who are losing sight of the goal and the initiative. And it's really important when we come together, as this has brought people together with a common goal, that no matter where our differences of opinion lie, we can't lose sight of the end game. So there are many ways to achieve it, and you have to give and you have to take. And so I would encourage everyone, when we're fighting for our sports, that we don't lose sight of that. And that's what they're trying to do at Stop the Lockout. That's been a really big thing. I mean, the hardest thing's been trying to get people to not swear and carry on long jobs, because it only takes 2 or 3 and suddenly you've brought the whole page down to a particular level. And that's, I think, a heart and soul issue for our sport and what we're doing with the hunting as well, is find that common ground. There's so much I could talk about, but because we've got a short time.
Go for another couple minutes.
Yep. Okay. I might just quickly go back to the threat from the marine parks. Especially with the national parks, I know there was you guys did so well with the hunting in state forests, and you look at the battle to hunt in national parks. There's very, very similar ideology running through the threats to the marine park estate, or the threats to lock us out of the marine park. As anglers, I don't think most of us were against the idea of a marine park as such. President Obama brought in a marine park which allowed recreational fishing in America, and that's because he realised that for whatever reason, or he was advised that recreational fishing was not really a threat, and also was a massive, massive industry and worth a lot of money. And I was thinking about hunting. Who here would have spent money on their four-wheel drive or hunting in the last month? Right. I was thinking about it. I just got a new four-wheel drive and I set up for my camping and fishing and going cod fishing and so on. I would hate to think how much money I've spent on that in the last few months just to get set up. And that's just to go cod fishing, right? I'm thinking about my camping. So there's a lot of people that made a lot of money. With the marine park estates and with the hunting industry and threats to doing that, there's a lot more people that are going to miss out than a lot of people realise. Like, my car wouldn't be set up now if I was locked out of cod fishing. I wouldn't have spent that money. My local mechanic made a lot of money. My local four-wheel drive shop, the local fishing shop, because I bought more tackle, so on, blah, blah, blah. It keeps going. I'm just one person. My clients spend, $280 to stay in a hotel for one night. They're just going to fish with me the next day. Generally, I only get a booking for a day most of the time. They'll buy coffee, they'll buy bits and pieces out on the water, they spend money with me, they might buy some tackle in at the tackle store in the city. Once you bring in these marine parks, the effect on the economy is that they can't measure it. They'll never measure that. It's the same with the hunting, the lockouts. What we just heard about, the restrictions on guns and the amount of money that must be lost just from bureaucracy and red tape. So with the marine parks and what they were going to do for us, the effect was going to be way wider than anyone could imagine. My local mechanic was going to miss out. Just the guy around the corner. It wasn't just fishermen. And I just think we need to keep that in mind too, that when we're pushing for our sport, how many other people benefit who may not be directly involved with what we do, but indirectly lose a lot of money. That was an angle I don't think we got across as well. They mentioned it, they certainly talked about it, but we talked about the boat industry missing out and the fishing tackle industry missing out, but there's a lot more than that. And I know they talked about the marine park down south that came in around Montague and down that Nowra, Shoalhaven area. Was it 24 businesses went out of business in the first 12 months? And the first to go was the local service station and supermarket down in Nowra. So, actually, no, it wasn't Nowra, it was Bateman's. Yeah, it was Bateman's. And a whole economy up and down the east coast on any of those little fishing towns loses huge amounts of income and potentially impacts so many lives when we lose that. So it's a lot bigger than we realise. A lot of people realise when we bring in this sort of legislation or they threaten our sports and our industry. I would say with the hunting, you've got to try and search for those areas as well to articulate those points. The threats against hunting can be sometimes hard to articulate. There's a lot more people who don't hunt who will miss out if you guys can't do your trips, can't do your hunting, can't book your trips. And on that, in relation to booking trips, the one thing I did miss out on, we're talking about partnering with people. Tourism New South Wales have a series of experiences they're selling to the world. You won't see a lot of this in Australia, but it's actually at the overseas functions and overseas conventions, I should say, for travel. They're pushing brochures on golfing holidays in Australia, winery tours in Australia. They're also pushing fishing tours in Australia. So Tourism New South Wales have realised there's a lot of money there. I believe they're doing... Someone has told me they're also looking at hunting as an option for inbound travel. Has anyone heard that? I haven't heard that, but someone mentioned it. Yeah? Are they doing... you had discussions, okay. Yeah, okay. Were you being sarcastic, or they are interested, they're genuine? Oh, great. And on that point, and I mentioned this at the Stop the Lockout rally, what is the barramundi worth to the Northern Territory? They couldn't give me a figure. They could not give me a figure. I'd love to know what the water buffalo is worth to the Northern Territory. I would love to know.
Andrew does an annual estimation of the value of hunting in New South Wales. What was the last time, Andrew?
I think it was 1.56 billion. And that was only, so that was the DPI data and insights that was released instead of...
Fantastic.
It was only second to rec and commercial fishing put together and beef cattle. Out of about 20 commodities that DPI deals with,
Yep.
we came in fourth, and it was the first year we did that this year. We fought hard to get it in there. It's to save place in my eyebrows.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I suppose I'm just thinking off the cuff, articulating those trips to even, once again, it's about winning the middle ground. I mean, if you can get those into place, those sort of trips into place, and you get some radical lefts who start screaming from the rooftops, it's not going to matter if the majority are in favour of it, because that's where winning the middle ground. So Tourism New South Wales may tread carefully on it for a while, but hang on a sec, water buffalo are a pest. They're doing damage. You've just won the middle ground. End of story. There's no, that's what I mean about trying to articulate anything we're doing. We've got the upper hand with that in terms of the moral ground and doing that. There's plenty of money to be made. There's lots of people going to win. It's a win-win for everyone, except for a bunch of bleeding, screaming people on the far left, maybe. It's the same with my passion. I keep getting a thing that it's cruel. Oh, it's cruel. Fish feel pain. I can articulate that very easily. They pulled 270 stingray barbs out of a hammerhead's face over in Florida when they had a pest hammerhead. And that fish was feeding like there was no tomorrow. It was eating every tarpon the guides were trying to catch for their customers. So they killed the shark and donated it to science. Put a stingray barb in a greenie's face and see how much they want to eat. You can't feel pain and have those... Sorry? What? His name was Steve. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm not going there. But what I mean is, you can articulate your point. Like we pulled in a kingfish yesterday with an injury on it that was so bad I couldn't believe the thing was still alive, and it was eating our flies. You know, fish don't feel pain the same way humans feel pain. We can get all anthropomorphic, but you can win the upper hand by just articulating your argument. You know, I was a zookeeper. I worked with mammals. I know the first sign of an animal in pain is it stops eating. It always is. It's, you know, we stop eating. You can win once again, you can win the argument fairly easily for those, you know, pests on the left. You can find some common ground with them sometimes as well. But yeah, that Tourism New South Wales, very important. I think there's hunting options there, a lot of money in hunting, a lot of reasons to articulate that to them, and I'm glad they're interested because the fishing side of it's been really good. The brochures they produce are amazing, so really good. Yeah, anyone, just fire away. Yes, Rob.
Do you have a professional guides association?
Yeah, professional. There was a Professional Fishing Guides Association. I was a member briefly there. The problem with that association was just more that didn't really do much for the members. That was paying fees that it was no return, and that was years ago. I haven't been involved with them, but I'd like to have seen them be more involved in some more grassroots stuff like we were talking about, more campaigns, and but I haven't looked at them for a long time. They might be great now, you know.
So that gives me a question for Mal Poole at the end of the day about whether the RFA could use an extra group in the RFA, being the professional charter operator.
Yep. And if that operation, the PFIGA, could do a lot more for members and get more proactive on that, that would get a lot more members too. So, but I don't really have an opinion on that group because I haven't had anything to do with them for a long time. So they might be a wonderful group. Have you had dealings with them?
Yeah, five still exists, Robert. So they are part of the RFA.
Good.
Oh, there you go.
Again, it's just a matter of just trying to work with those groups. In simple terms, their ideologies most probably very appropriate for guides and charter boat guides. The hassle is the government. Once again, we come back to red tape and bureaucracy that sort of plays into the hands of these things. They've worked on ecotourism, so catch and release in national parks, for example.
Yep.
A really key sort of point that has been driven, and we did a research project with FIGA, representatives, must have been 7 or 8 years ago now, as an opportunity for to work on things. And I know it's a bit hard in terms of hunting guys, but certainly point, shoot and use a camera. Our Spearos are now looking at that scenario as being one of their competition guidelines. So maybe there's an opportunity. I'm talking about animals versus feral animals, by the way, so yeah, so different kettle of fish with ferals. But look, there's opportunities there to build on those relationships with other groups that support your industry.
Actually, you just brought up something interesting that I didn't mention, just a snapshot or a soundbite. How we portray our sport's really important too. You mentioned the snapshot and taking a photo. Obviously in fishing it's a little easier to take a photo of your catch and let it go. You don't have to kill everything you catch. But even in hunting, like the fishing magazines removed dead fish shots 30 years ago, I think, 25 years ago, of hanging fish up by their gills and racks of dead fish and stuff. Social media is a massive thing. So how you promote, like I know when I was up with the boys pig hunting in Cape York, all the shots were really specifically set up to be really good, clean shots, and because they use them on social media and they promote their sport. And yeah, so that's just an interesting point. You know, how we let our sport come across to people. And you know, there's a charter guy down in Victoria, and he must have a photo every week of 30 or 40 dead fish, and he gets so much bad press from people about it because it's like, oh, do you kill everything you catch? You know. That's fine. He's entitled to do it if it's within the law, and I'm not going to pass judgment on him. But I'm telling you, I don't pass judgment on him. But I tell you what, a lot of people will, and they're not fishermen and they're not hunters. They're just the middle ground people. So yeah, how we promote our sport's important. Sorry, more questions? Anyone else?
Thanks, Justin. Just going back on the previous speaker, Rod, and how he basically talked about how the gun companies were responsible for this cipher, I think it was called.
Yep.
And going to the previous speaker before that and talking about building alliances, just as someone myself who's just an average human being that attended a lot of the Stop the Lockout meetings, I followed it on Facebook quite religiously.
Yep.
I went to the meeting at Fish Station at Mona Vale there, and I was really impressed that Fishing Station supplied their venue for that. One thing that really disappointed me was the lack of support publicly from companies that make a lot of money out of fishing. I'm not going to mention any names here, but I'm sure a lot of fishermen know who we're talking about. I'd just like to hear what your opinions on that are.
Yeah, I was with you on that until I got a little bit more information. Just be aware that a lot of the big companies, I can talk for the fishing tackle companies, are owned by parent companies in Japan. And philosophically, they're really strict about any of their companies around the world getting involved in any politics, because what politics you enter in one country might be totally oppositional to what's happening in another country. So once your company takes a political stand on something, it can be really, really hard. And there's a lot of red tape. They had to, well, red tape's the wrong word, but it's really hard for them to get permission out of Japan to get involved in a political campaign. Some companies, I believe Daiwa, and I know I'm sponsored by them, but there's nothing to do with that. I believe Daiwa were one of the few companies that got permission to actually get a little bit more vocal, but it took them a while. So once you see that side of it, you understand that they can't operate on their own. A lot of these companies, they have to get permission from head office, and a lot of the fishing companies are from Japan, and that's just how the Japanese operate. Yep.
We also have seen, and Robert knows it as well as I do, that there's been a massive disconnect between activism and political activism at the grassroots level, like shooters, fishers, and what the industries do.
Yep.
We're obviously in campaign mode now, and we're trying to raise money. 90% of our money, if not more, comes from ordinary people like us. Just on another question, I noticed that the Stop the Lockout page, and you said you haven't been on there for a while, or you haven't been. It's likes, or it's
It's gone down.
It's gone down by a third.
Yep. Facebook.
Are they deliberately doing it? Are they?
Apparently their algorithms work out who's not engaged with the page and just remove them automatically. But I could be a little conspiracy theorist about that.
No, I think it's commercial. I mean, I noticed
it could be commercial.
It ramped very hard and then it plateaued.
Yes.
And I took that to interpret that they wanted you to start buying sponsorship to get more during the campaign.
It's quite possible. I tried to get hold of Sal a couple of days ago and just get an update. The only reason I haven't been able to, I've had to drop admin and stay out of it. It's just I literally am working that many hours at the moment. I just can't get involved. Otherwise, I'll never sleep because I'm up 4 in the morning. I'm guiding every day, pretty much. And I'm also aware that a lot of those social media companies, such as YouTube, Google, all that, they've got pretty strong policies in place at a top level that come in pretty heavily to the left, and that includes censoring. I believe Breitbart, which is like a conservative group in the States, have been, no, it wasn't Breitbart, it was InfoWars, which is a bit more to the right, but I believe they've been banned from YouTube. And a lot of other companies are having trouble pushing a message that's not to the left. And I just wonder with Facebook whether there's a bit of that going on. I'm not saying it has, but I would always keep that sort of stuff in mind too.
I mean, I don't know like you any more than that, but I would more likely look at it on the basis of commercial reality. They're looking to try to make money out of you. 67,000 or nearly 70,000 is a big group, especially when you picked it up so quickly. They'd be keen on trying to push you to start spending money on that group.
Well, they do the same with business pages if you're not, so yeah, that's the more, Occam's razor, that's probably the most likely hypothesis, yeah. Anyways, well, thanks very much, guys. I appreciate that. And if you've got any other questions, whatever, we'll talk later. I'm looking forward to meeting you all.
Thanks a lot, Justin.